Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Crypto Chronicle Podcast. It is the 9th of April. Special week.
Yeah, it's done well, hasn't it?
I meant because it's your birthday.
Oh.
Happy birthday to Taylor.
Look, it was actually very ironic, right? Because like Sunday, my birthday, we were literally sitting at lunch and I'm like, looked at my phone quickly and I'm like, oh, Bitcoin's moving up.
The birthday
present to myself. I'd looked at Steph and I went, I knew it was coming. So it's been great.
Yeah. So probably the last week, it's probably not too jam-packed in terms of fundamental news. I think the market's kind of in cruise control somewhat fundamentally. I mean, there's pieces here and there, and obviously the main sticking point for us is the halving in less than 10 days. I think it's come forward to 18th now. I think we were discussing it last week, how you thought it would come forward.
Hash power jumping.
Yeah, so I've definitely looked in 2 weeks ago. It was the 20th, and then last week, I think when I was discussing it was the 19th, and I looked yesterday and it was the 18th.
Yeah, it's roughly 10 days or something from now, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so AUD time.
Yep, so obviously I think that's the big sticking point for most people, and probably for most traders and investors, is whether we get that pre-halving or post-halving pullback. More often than not, I think, we discussed at length last week, the halving is a bit of a non-event, and really I think, anyone trying to tell you they know what's going to happen unequivocally doesn't know, because we're kind of in uncharted waters, as we've discussed. AF before the halving, ETF inflows here and there. There's the ETH ETF, that's now in a month and 14 days, so the 23rd of May.
Fingers crossed.
Which we will speak on a bit later in the TA part, but let's get into the news anyway. The good thing about those ETF inflows, and this is the number one ETF podcast, of course, on planet Earth.
If you have an ETF, get us to sponsor it.
I think maybe we should start an IW ETF.
Ooh.
It's like 50% of it's held in miners, 25% of it's in Trading Academy, 12.5% in DeFi, 12.5% in day trading. Yeah, that actually doesn't sound too bad.
Take my money.
But March did see the largest amount of volume for those spot Bitcoin ETFs. So it's 111 billion, which was triple that from February. So
it's not really a shock, is it?
It's not a shock, but I would say to most people that I feel like the assumption was that it would start really hot, the volume, and then slowly die off as kind of, those that wanted to get in were in. Which obviously is the opposite, because, I remember when we were speaking back in January, we were speaking about it in February, and we were even speaking about, when we get to the halving, will they still be buying? Will there still be this volume? And I think our assumptions are kind of, we think it'll die off a bit, but...
Do you think that there is similarity between Bitcoin and cocaine? Because I'll put you this way, right? People have got in and they've got it cheap, and now all of a sudden it's going up in price and they're addicted.
They are.
They are going hard.
It's not a bad analogy. I don't mind.
We're not drug users, but what I'm saying is that people get in early and they go, oh, this is amazing. And they're just getting hooked.
Yeah. No, it's a great way to put it. And I think, it is interesting. I'd like to kind of interview or speak to someone. I guess I don't have many American counterparts, but maybe someone that was never involved in crypto per se, and then decided, no, you know what, I think it's safe enough now to invest in this ETF.
I do know someone at BlackRock. Should I try and get them on?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But we'll speak to them about, what the kind of retail vibe is amongst these investors that are in the ETF that hadn't been in crypto otherwise, and whether they're constantly trading the dips and the thingos, or whether most of them are just set and forget, and whether that's just new people coming in and some people selling out. It's a lot of assumptions, but...
Well, the percentage of ownership's going up in the sense of what ETFs are basing, right? Like, what was it? I can't remember who it was, and so don't quote me on it, but someone was like saying the original sort of expansion was, putting 0.5 or 1% of your balance into Bitcoin, and now they're suggesting 20%.
Yeah, I don't think it's that high. I think initially maybe it was 0.5% of allocation of, your 401k and your retirement plan. Now I think they're more inclined to pull that to 2.5%. Yeah, right. 5%.
I thought it was like...
Which is still, 5 times the initial allocation.
I was still going, 20 times more. I was like, come on, that's a bit rich.
The boomers aren't putting 20% of
I didn't think so. I just thought, come on, they're not like me. But yeah, exactly. It's good to see that's obviously growing though.
Yeah, still going. And then, even today, what was very interesting about this pump overnight for me was that today's inflows for IBIT, which is BlackRock, was the lowest they had pretty much ever been, or close to.
Where did the volume come from?
There was 20 million in inflows for BlackRock, and there was negative 300, well, there was 300 million in outflows for Grayscale. So, well, maybe it's just a bit for next whales that are bidding on their Bitcoin and ETH and saying, you ETF MFers think you run the party, but the old Bitfinex whales do in this game. So
interesting to see if BlackRock follows suit then.
Yeah, well, I actually think, I didn't look into all of the data mistakenly, but BlackRock's was low, but I think Bitwise and stuff actually beat them for the first,
wow, yeah.
So they had more, so maybe it was just one of those days where a lot of BlackRock people sold, or maybe sold the surge.
Yeah,
who knows?
maybe. Yeah.
So that's really good to see. There was one more ETF piece, which I'll quickly speak on, two more. But with BlackRock as well, they've actually enhanced their Bitcoin ETF with the addition of 5 Wall Street firms. So they've added ABN Clearing, Citadel Securities, Citadel Global Markets, Goldman Sachs, and UBS Securities.
Goldman's.
So it's essentially to do with cash creation and redemption. I think we've gone over this in the past, but with these applications, they adopted essentially this mechanism that allowed them to be created or redeemed solely through cash transactions, which kind of deviated from that traditional in-kind model that you see for most ETFs. So yeah, as you said, that's just another probably reason why this demand is continuing to grow, right? Because they're adding all these other institutional companies, and it's like you hear the people that are under Goldman Sachs, you can now have access to the IBIT ETF. If you have money with Citadel, Citigroup, welcome to the IBIT ETF, the greatest show in town. I'm probably sure of what Larry Fink is saying. So,
exactly, yeah.
But more locally, of important news is Monochrome is an Australian asset company, and they're looking to introduce the first ever Australian spot Bitcoin ETF, which is not massive news because, Australia is kind of a small fish in this pond of crypto, but
makes up a lot of volume.
Yeah. But as we kind of complain about a lot on this podcast is the lack of innovation in Australia in tech.
What's your gut feeling of likelihood to get accepted? Because mine's pretty low.
Well, they have said that they expect CBOE to approve it by July. So
maximum $1,000.
Because it was initially slated for the ASX, but CEO Jeff Yu, who's the CEO of Monochrome, he believes the CBOE aligns better with their goals. So it'll be interesting. I think knowing Australia and Big Brother America, then maybe there's the inclination that it's just they're going to accept it because if the SEC is okay with it, then we're okay with it, I guess.
Do you reckon Americans struggle to get fiat onto an exchange? Like $400?
Not, no.
No. The irony of this is just astounding.
No. Alrighty, well, that's enough on ETFs. One little bit of late news, which I can't actually recall whether we discussed. I've maybe floated it, but I did do the news article for it afterwards, was the Doge transferring $2 billion in Silk Road funds. So I think it was a bit of FUD news. So what I wanted to talk about this is, without fail, every time there is a local bottom, there is a FUD piece on the US government selling their Bitcoin.
Yep.
I'm not even joking. Go back and look at the last 50 local bottoms, and there will be a piece on US government are going to reject this or sell this or blah, blah, blah. So anyways, the story is here.
US arrests SBF. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's like 40,000 Bitcoin. So they transferred it to Coinbase Prime. So that's where everyone started kind of pazzing. But, and obviously Silk Road, and I think we did speak about this last week, but it kind of remains undisclosed whether they sell at OTC, even if they did, and whether it impacts the market. And because I feel like they wouldn't openly sell it on the market. I don't know the rules and regulations behind it, but would have thought that it wouldn't impact the market because they would just sell it to an institution in the US, OTC.
That they wouldn't be able to, because wasn't there was someone else in a similar position. It was someone like Mt. Gox or whatever it is, and they couldn't sell all of it onto the market to flood. Similar ruling, wasn't it?
Maybe.
There was something like this ages ago, yeah. So I presume they'd be under the same caveat as that.
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah.
If not, jeez. There you go.
Alrighty. Well, moving on to slightly other, better, more positive news is that, well, for some, but I think we do have a few passionate XRP listeners. I know Craig is one. I think Ads is one. Sorry, Ads, for publicising that if you didn't want it. But
you do as soon as someone,
like XRP.
As soon as someone's designated an XRP lover, there's just an instant stigma.
Oh yeah. But in
poor person.
Yeah, it's interesting because Ripple have released their stablecoin, and the running joke is, XRP is a stable coin.
It's already. What's
So
different?
why have you released a stable coin? But it's introduced a USD-backed stable coin, of course, to compete with Circle and Tether. So their idea is here over the next 5 years, they'll be in competition with USDC and Tether. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they were, because this cult following of XRP, like I literally go online and I cannot fathom like how these people exist and like who was the architecture of all of this 5 years ago, that's 7 years ago, that still has these people head over heels in love with a coin that isn't like even a third of its ATH in 2017, 2 cycles ago. Like it's, anyways, let's just leave it for now. I hope I eat my words, and I hope Ripple is $10 like everyone that owns Ripple thinks it's going to.
Do you think it's going to be the next Luna?
No. But I'll tell you what, Athena has a chance to be, but I won't spook anyone out of that. But Athena stable, we can speak about that another time. But anyways, David Schwartz has disclosed that the issuance will be on the XRP Ledger and Ethereum blockchain. And he highlighted, so their priority is to get market share over kind of risky maneuvers. It'll all be audited properly, but I guess it complements Ripple's existing offerings, whatever they are.
Why do we need so many stables is beyond me.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No. Just don't see it. No need. Everything else, every other stable that is still around performs quite well.
Yeah. Well, makes sense. Yeah.
Just not that sure
I think there's
why.
just always...
What's it called? XRPD?
I guess it comes down to a regulatory thing, right? So like USDT and Tether is based in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to be the first one that's like, Circle's, the US backed one. I don't know where Ripple is based.
Ripple's Hong Kong, isn't it?
Could be. Well, could be. But anyways.
Ripple Labs is, I think, isn't it?
That could be the angle, whether they want to, geographically impose themselves somewhere. But
do we know what it's called? XRPD or T or...
I actually don't know. I feel like they haven't given it a name yet.
It's got to be XRPD, doesn't it? XRP
Probably.
dollar.
Probably. Alrighty. I actually did miss a little piece of ETF news, which now I feel bad about. Sorry, ETF fans.
We finished on that.
But I'll just briefly mention it. Is that Morgan Stanley are looking to announce their Bitcoin ETF soon and join the race, and at the same time outpace UBS to become the premium Bitcoin ETF provider. So neither of them have integrated ETFs yet, funnily enough, UBS and Morgan Stanley. But UBS plans to introduce them in the next 4 days. And so apparently Morgan Stanley's been looking to beat them into that. So they've both got impending approvals. So, whilst it seems like nothing news to me, it's just still more TradeFi.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking to appear to embrace Bitcoin that otherwise wouldn't have. I'm sure, once again, if you went and looked at Morgan Stanley or UBS's opinions on Bitcoin or cryptocurrency 4 years ago, like Larry Fink's.
Yeah.
But they've got to appease their customers, and this is how you roll everyone over. As I've stated many times before, I'm sure there were a lot of companies that didn't want to adopt the internet for their customers in 2000, 2001, and then it got to 2005, and they said, we've really stuffed up this last 5 years not providing internet on our business.
It was literally, I remember reading an article similar, like it was actually phrased pretty much exactly like you did this, and it was some business that literally was not using internet, and they were making sure that everything was done via hand and letters and everything, and then all of a sudden 2 years later they were like fully flipped, and it was just,
Well, I guess the great tech story, and I don't want to get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure, Amazon started as a bookstore, and he had multiple bookstores, and then the internet was released in, the late 90s, and he thought, why don't I become an online bookstore? That's the new Amazon. And you go and look at the stock return from 2000 in that tech bubble to now, it'll make sense why Amazon did so well in that shift. But, I think that's the point here. We'll continue, I know the banks are dogs to us, but we've made points in recent podcasts about ANZ adopting blockchain technology and Chainlink getting integrated here with their oracles, and I just think the bull market, you'll just see this more and more and more and more.
I think so.
It's good to see. For the first piece of somewhat negative news, well, actually it's positive news, is that the SEC did find Terraform Labs and Do Kwon guilty of fraud.
Wow.
So the verdict was announced by SEC law enforcement on April 5th, and it held them accountable for deceiving investors about the stability of Terra USD and the platform's payment application. So obviously for those that know that were around in mid-2022, we all know about the Terra UST and the Terraform Labs breakdown, 3AC and FTX, and how that kind of spiraled the bear market out of control.
2022 called, they want their news back.
But so the jury found Terraform guilty on 6 charges and described their
only 6.
Well, I'm sure there were 6 pretty big ones, but Do Do Kwon, he's been looking rather fit lately.
He's still hiding out in Hong Kong, isn't he?
No. He's in Montenegro in jail, but he hasn't been extradited yet. But
That's it,
if you looked at Do Kwon before he went in jail, he was a little bit chubby, and they brought him out of jail the other day.
So he's ripped.
He's on that jail diet, just gym and bread and whatever they do eat in there. But
don't squeal.
well, maybe hopefully he's like Sammy and offering them a few tips in there for meme season. I don't know, but
when's the next meme coming out? Dough with hat.
Mate, it will be Dough in jail.
As soon as we get out of here, Mitch, on the deck Dough with hat.
Well, lucky we're not Ansem or some popular influencer. I'm sure everything would get memed in our podcast and made into a soul meme coin. If so, maybe that'll be our what we strive to one day.
IWC with hat.
Last piece of news just quickly is something that I found really cool and interesting was that Binance's spot trading volume had hit its highest level since May of 2021.
Wow.
May of 2021 to most people might not be significant, but that was what we have described in prior podcasts as the actual all-time high. And what I mean by that is we rallied to 64,500, 65,000. We rejected. We went down to 30,000. There was the pump back to 69,000 and a lot of FTX and a lot of dodgy stuff happening. But anyways, the point being that spot volume on Binance, which is the international largest, biggest cryptocurrency exchange, is at its highest level since that all-time high. So essentially you can make the assumption that, the demand is back. That was at the last of the peak market for spot trading.
Well, do you happen to remember what the peaks were in that 2016-17 area?
I don't have that data here.
Because it'd be interesting to see what percentage rise from then to 2021 and what we could potentially look to expect next time around. Because obviously the previous is implicative of
I think it would be a shadow of what the 2021 one was, because even though we had price cycles, they didn't have retail blow off tops. Do you know what I mean? They did have large increases in price, but that was from a small sector of people pushing price up. It wasn't like you saw on Channel 9 News that Bitcoin had hit an all-time high and Joey Boy was grabbing his phone, downloading Coinbase and just buying Bitcoin. That didn't happen in the previous cycles, I believe.
Joey doesn't know how to use a phone.
No, he doesn't. Just really good at hacking computers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found obviously the surge coincides with us reaching all-time highs. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to just still notice that I feel like a lot of people still talk about how, retail's not here and it's not the same. It's just, I feel like it does show that there's still investor interest despite what people are saying. And
well, it's like I looked at Google Trends the other day and it's still at 50s.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So there's still double as much ready to go. Yeah.
But I think it's important to note that, as well, think about everything Binance has been through. Think about what FTX did to the confidence in centralized exchanges. Think about every case that over the last 12 to 16, 18 months that CZ and Binance are fighting against the SEC and all the US government, and, CZ's out of the picture now and Binance still on top with the greatest market share now, the highest amount of spot volume ever traded in cryptocurrency history. So in March. So awesome to see that they're still alive. I think all of us were pretty staunch backers of Binance, but there was a bit of time there where we were a bit worried. But
a little bit.
Long live CZ.
A little bit scary. Well, when the founder gets arrested, it's kind of...
Yeah. But CZ was always a good man. I'll stand by that.
Yeah, yep.
Moving on to the technical analysis. So I think last week, the difference in last week's was on the podcast in the afternoon. I think we're at 69,000. And by the time I'd written the Chronicle at home and released at 6 p.m, we'd dropped to 66,000. If you go back and read that Chronicle, or you go back and listen, I'm sure, to the podcast, I spoke about that $65,000 level being the bullish reversal point for support that I was relaying to Trading Academy members and our Day Trading Academy and course members as what would be our most bullish structurally level to hold, and then reverse that, because if for those that have been following along in the Elliott wave counts, it still signifies that we could be making a wave 3 or wave 5.
Yeah.
Now, I won't be getting too technical, but I'll provide some screenshots that I shared in the Chronicle with day trading course members, maybe even a few screenshots from the market update I sent last week to Trading Academy members. But I made the point that, this was our kind of last point of support before we'd reached 50s.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm willing to trade here. For those that are in the day trading course, we've been compounding along. And we added to our position at 65,000 with increased confidence, because to us, invalidation and applying technical analysis was really easy. If we lost 65, 64-ish, that probably meant we went to 59.
Yeah.
And then we could reassess there. And I made the psychological points that I'll show is that most people, so in the prior weeks when we were at 60,000, everyone said we're going to 50,000. We reversed pretty fast to 70,000. A lot of people got left in the dust, wrecked. Same thing happened here though, is that we got a minor pullback. If you're live on crypto Twitter, you talk amongst a lot of traders, 99% of them at 65,000 said we're going to 59,000, and it was the exact same as when. Yeah. And more often than not, you find that's probably, and I'm not saying you should sentiment trade or counter trade your Twitter timeline, but I've found over my wealth of experience that that's usually a good sign that it's not saying 59,000, because if you have been in Bitcoin long enough, you'll know that it never goes where the majority think it's going.
No, when we're at 20K and everyone was calling 10.
Exactly.
Same exact thing. Yeah.
So just on that, so Trading Academy members, we were able to get another buyout last week. We also had a big shift in our portfolio where we reallocated. Well, obviously we did a bulk of our investing in June of 2022 into 2023. At the bottom of the market, we analysed trends and narratives, or obviously older projects that we wanted to be with. As a hindsight thing, we obviously can't tell who's going to outperform who, but obviously got to a point now where we could trim back our portfolio and sell off either some of those that had underperformed and we're in a little loss in, or just maybe there was some of those that had gone up a bit, but
not enough.
But say in their industry were being outperformed by others. So I think it was good that we realised we got 50 plus units back that we'll be looking to expend now, newer projects, or adding back to obviously our more stronger projects, which we actually did last week as well on one of them. That's already, I think we bought it at $21.70. I saw it at above 26 today. So important that you use those levels that are identified in the Chronicle, and obviously for our paying members in the Discord and Telegram to use the dollar cost average. Taylor's spoken about at length on here how he does that, and a lot of different members of ours do that. So at the moment we hit 73,000 overnight. It was about 72,800.
It's around high.
Yeah, so that rally has been great because it's cleared structurally a lot of local resistance levels. And what it's done now, interestingly enough, is it rejected our very, very last liquidity level and resistance level before all-time highs. So our all-time high sit at 74,000. We rejected 73,000. It was the last daily candle sweep before all-time highs. So my thinking is now that we've wiped this liquidity here, it's either we continue to grind upwards and we will take all-time highs and potentially push on to 75 to 77,000 or 82,000, which I can show as two different Fibonacci extension targets. Or we could get a situation where we get a bit of a cool off now that we've had a rally. There's a lot of people chasing with longs. A lot of the shorts have been wiped in the short squeeze. So a lot of the of the damage has been done. That more often than not, when Bitcoin sees this, like we did just pump from 64,000 to 73,000 in a couple of days. To mind you, still
just a small 10 grand.
Yeah, just a small 10 grand.
Nothing.
And it's perfectly fine to see us pump from 64 to 73, back to 70, then to 75, or back to even 69 to retest that prior 2021 all-time high. That perfectly aligns with the golden pocket of the range as well. So at the moment, as hopefully I was relaying it in the podcast last week, because I was definitely relaying it to our members that I was confident in high prices, to not panic, get support. The order flow and data showed that there was a ton of bullish divergences and absorptions in the market. It was likely we were going to squeeze and take the liquidity. And it happened, which is great. And now we can kind of action for high now, I believe. And if not, I think what you'll see is if we do get a drastic pullback, which everyone seems to likely think will happen, it will be a sell the news event of the halving. Just as it was of the ETF. We rallied, let's just call it from 35,000 to 48,000 in the week or two leading up to the ETF. We then sold just pretty much all of that back to where we were, and then we resumed. So let's just call it that. It doesn't have to be a 20% pullback is still from 75,000 to 62,000 or whatever. I can't do the maths in my head, but so don't be shaken out or surprised if maybe we rally a bit from here the next 10 days and we take new all-time highs and we go to 77,000 and we retreat to 63,000 or 60,000 and just retest one of those levels, because we had a huge sell the news event that was a negative 20 22% drop in the ETF, we ripped straight past 50,000 after that.
Yeah,
So
exactly,
many people got left in the dust. Don't be that person that waits patiently for 77,000, sees Bitcoin go back down to 65 and decides, well, that's it. And then, 90 days after the halving, we're at 90,000 and you're wondering why I wasn't just patient.
Mate, the 90-day rule looks good.
Yeah. If you need it, I'll probably include some of that information on the halving and what we see usually.
The 90-day rule puts it at 75K at half, which
yeah.
We're looking very handsomely right now. I was getting a bit curious about, I was like, oh, geez, I think we're going to be around the 60s.
I think there's just a lot to take in. I think as we've discussed, ATH before the halving, we haven't had that major proper 618 pullback. We've got the inflows from the ETFs. So I think everyone just needs to take it as they can, and if you're a reasonable investor and you understand the long-term time horizon, it's using any of these dips that we do potentially get to accumulate more crypto, to on-sell it in a few months, 6 months, 12 months, 2025, whenever the time is right.
Yeah.
Mining.
Lots. Ironically, because the last few weeks have been pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies. A bit about the main thing at the moment is long-term viewpoints. All right, machines and hash rate and all that is, to be honest, very similar to what it was. The biggest thing that we're seeing at the moment is obviously demand starting to spike. A lot of my clients have been reaching out to me, and apologies if I have missed you. It's just that we've had that many people reach out. It's been impossible to get back to everyone within 5-10 minutes. So the biggest the biggest thing that we're sort of implying to people is that it is kind of the last chance. Yeah. Right. And the main reason why is because stock availability is plummeting. All right. With Bitmain releasing those new S21 Pros, they're pretty much making everything else half redundant. They've stopped producing KS3s. There's a limited amount of KS5s. It's full gears ahead towards what Q4 is bringing. So what that does is it pushes an initial short squeeze on anything that's available now or in the interim term. So T21s, we're going to sell out very quickly. S21s are almost out, and they're already on a future batch for sort of June, July. The next S21 Pros are for, they're calling it Q3, Q4. I'll be very surprised if anyone really gets one before November, because the first lot's already sold out to, all the big firms, and, you're ordering 27,000 on them and stuff like that. So more or less, you're not getting one. So we're also struggling at the moment in the sense that everywhere on the planet is struggling to find rack space. All right. That's something that we would have presumed we'd have an issue with in the end of this year, because usually it takes a bit longer. No, it's happening now. So we're seeing records amount of people. I implore anyone that's looking at mining, get in early, because the last thing you want to do is go through the halving. Oh, look, Bitcoin's at 100 grand. Let's start mining. Awesome returns, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. You're not going to get online for 3 months.
People make the same mistakes just in trading as they do with mining in crypto. Exactly. They FOMO in at the all-time highs of mining machines and of Bitcoin prices, and it works the exact same as what the traders did at the top of 2021. Yeah. So be really mindful of that.
Yeah, and it's particularly when it comes down to, obviously, there's a few factors when you're buying a miner. Not only is it online ETA, price up front is one of the biggest things, and we're starting to see movement. Yeah. And so once, I'm getting that little, hairs on my legs stand up point, because it's like, geez, what am I going to be buying in 3 months? Nothing. Yeah. Because there's going to be nothing. So, always, it's always a good time to get into Bitcoin mining, but there's obviously particular points which are more advantage to others. So, reach out. We've got plenty of options available at the moment. It's just that in the few months, there's going to be none. Yeah. And I feel really bad because I don't know what I'm going to do.
Hopefully we'll figure it out.
It's going to coincide exactly when we're in the US. And I'm going to be stressed, which is not going to be fun.
Think about it when it comes. I do want to add quickly, I don't know what's happening in the altcoin market, but I did miss a thing in the technical analysis part, is ETH is running right now. It is hot. And for those ETH investors or those that are piqued their interest in a altcoin season, is that right now I think we've probably had this conversation 100 times about ETH ETF versus Bitcoin halving versus Bitcoin dominance versus FBTC. FBTC's rallied like as much as 5% overnight, and this morning and this afternoon. It's reclaiming a major support level. If ETH can continue to outperform Bitcoin and that playbook leading into the ETH ETF, I think we're going to get an altcoin vertical explosion.
Are we starting to see that transition from Sol to ETH?
I think we are. If you go and look at the daily, or you go and look at Sol is congested really hard right now, and it's a victim of its own success. Yeah. And that's why it's not a bearish thing, because You're technically, it's not a bearish thing at all, but people this market is built on narratives.
Yeah.
It's built on momentum. As soon as that momentum stalls, it doesn't matter whether it's your $2 million meme coin that stalls at 5, it's going back to 0. If it stalls for a month, it's hard to pick that pace up again,
exactly,
especially if everyone looks at their chart and goes, oh, ETH up 5%, Sol down 3%.
Yeah,
I'm rotating. I don't want to miss the. See, I remember the ETH meme scene last time. Like, I don't want to. Yeah. So, keep your eye on that, and keep your eye on the Bitcoin dominance chart versus the ETH BTC chart, because it's going to provide a ton of altcoin opportunities if we do get that explosion. So, something I'll talk about and I'll show in the Chronicle. But
sounds good.
Been about a flat 30 minutes. Happy birthday to Taylor.
Cheers.
Hopefully Bitcoin can continue its continuation of strength here and we don't get that pullback. If we do, we'll be buying in the trading academy. We'll be trading in DeFi. We'll be trading in day trading.
If it goes up,
probably add more miners too.
If it goes up, I'll buy myself a birthday present. If it goes down, I'll be buying more Bitcoin. So it's a win-win almost.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Alrighty, thanks guys. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week.